Warning. Two Seals and a Walrus talks about the controversial subject matter of taking personal control of your mind and body, living an epic life, and giving absolutely zero fucks for anyone who would suggest you do otherwise. Thus, any discussions we have about anything, including disregarding the status quo, leading with compassion, and exploring personal and collective consciousness with the aid of controlled substances, is done for education and harm reduction purposes only. This meets YouTube's community guidelines and limitations for advertising revenue eligibility, but it's also common sense. P.S. We love you. Don't fuck that up.
Two Seals and a Walrus.
Hey, welcome to Two Seals and a Walrus. I am Sean Webb. I am an author / engineer. To my right, we have two United States Navy SEALs who are the co-hosts of this show. First, we have Ben Johnson, a sniper / medic, who is a crazy person. And to his right, we have Doug Moulton, who is a sniper retired as well. And not as crazy, but working on it.
One way or another.
So what we call norms.
Right. So this is the show where we talk about the mind. We talk about improving our minds. We talk about consciousness expansion. We talk about all kinds of cool stuff that tickles our fancy and hopefully will tickle yours as well. So what's going on with you guys? What's new in the world of regular life?
Oh man, I just got back from like a week-long work trip. It's pretty good. Got to hop around Texas, visit a little teammate of ours, develop some business, which was the point of doing a business trip. That was good. The startup's going well. We're making a lot of progress. We're getting ready to do some beta testing for a truly autonomous drone flight, which you can only do under specific exceptions. So we're proving out autonomous flight with one of our product lines with a partner company developing a management system for. So really exciting.
What?
Yeah,
wow.
we're gonna be one of the first ones, at least where we secretly reside, proving out these systems. Not only to prove out that it's safe and there's good checks and balances, but to prove out the management system that this other company is developing for.
Yes, you're doing like artificial intelligence controlled drones, basically,
correct.
right?
And robots, yes.
And robots for various.
Yeah, so the focus is in the pest control industry. So we developed an algorithm to recognize pest vertebrates. We focus on such a blanket word.
I know a few of those pest vertebrates.
Just sitting one sit between us. So we focus on waterfowl, geese, other crittens like that.
Hey, Alexa, go kill that fucking rooster next door.
I mean, technically, we could hook it up to Alexa. So to be clear too, our systems are PETA friendly. We do not contact the animal. We do not harm it. It is to break its behavioral patterns,
right,
and get it to leave the area permanently.
Okay. So
Ben's laughing.
So basically, so you don't break any rules if the animal gets a non-contact order from the court, and you're good to go.
Keep them on the do not call list.
Yeah, those are protected by HIPAA laws, so it's kind of tough to figure those out anyway.
And these hippos are where?
It's all over the place.
So disrupting its pattern of behavior is breathing in that category?
No, see,
okay.
that would be
you couldn't backdoor that rule.
Developing a robot to dispatch creatures actually is an easy solution. The hard solution is making it non-harmful to the animals.
Yeah, humane.
Yep.
I was going to say, the problem is welding those chainsaws to a drone strong enough to hold him.
And that's why we have the ground robot.
All right, so what's up in Ben's world the last couple of weeks?
Well, I got this work gig coming up, and I found out about it. It's in Miami. It's a pretty decent pay gig, and it's with one of our new partners, and it's a contract they've had repetitively, apparently, for the past few years. So I heard about it, and I was talking to my partner, and he was like, "Yeah, probably send you down there, but they're not talking about paying for travel." I was like, "I'm gonna go because it's good money, so just cover the gas." He's like, "Cool." So it's a 3-day gig, and apparently, come to find out, it's actually kind of a sensitive issue because the client or the partners that we're working with currently have had issues with complaints from the same client that's hired us.
Oh, wow.
Every year,
Right.
every single year, they have a security agent attached.
And they don't like the people that they've sent down there, and so they're like,
apparently, it's just some just repetitive complaints about a lack of professionalism and yada yada yada. So I was like, who the hell are we working for? Who are we doing this protection thing
right,
for?
who's so picky?
He said, he's like, I don't know, it's some bigwig person and so some rich person, and I was like, all right, cool. Well, let me know when you have more information. So he hits me up. He's like, yeah, well, so the reason that they have professionalism issues is because the event's actually a porn convention. So that's great.
So Ben's going to go down and do security for a porn convention.
Well,
Make sure you wear gloves.
so I find out it's a porn convention. I was like, oh God, as cool as titties are from a professional standpoint, it's very difficult to look anywhere in a building full of titties and not be misconstrued as unprofessional. So I think I'm gonna Ray Charles this one with some pretty big sunglasses or so, I don't know. But and then I found out yesterday the plot thickens just a skosh because this person, this bigwig bazillionaire that hires personal security for the porn convention, apparently they're pretty important. To come to find out now that it's a chick.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so that's great.
Right.
The only thing that complicates a professional relationship between two people more than titties is the possession of the alternative genitalia in that presence. Like, it doesn't matter how many titties I don't look at. I could sneeze too loud and this chick's gonna be like, super unprofessional asshole, just jacking off every 10 seconds. Every time I look over, he's got his dick out.
Classic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I took a look at pornography a while back after the endogenous experience that I had, like, the expansion experience, the awakening experience.
Like you looked at porn?
Yeah, I mean, previously I used to, as a marital aid and whatever, you can use these things, but I mean, porn became, free on the internet. And at that point, like, every male in the country went pretty nuts for a little while saying, oh my God, this is so cool. And I was like, okay, I was in that group for a little while, but then I came back to it post like this awakening experience type of thing with consciousness expansion, whatever we want to call it. And I looked at it from a meta-awareness position. I looked at it from what in this is so interesting for people and what used to be so interesting for me that's not so interesting now. And I got to tell you, I don't get it so much anymore. Like, I don't understand it as much anymore because one of the issues that I ran into was that I saw in these visions or whatever you want to call it, the procreation process of like cells coming together and exchanging intelligent information and then creating an entire human body, like over and over again, all the way through, an entire life into death and decomposition, etc. And it is so biological for me now that I see sex totally different. And of course I see porn totally different in that, like, even recreational sex at this point to me is like, okay, let's fool our body into pretending like we're going to procreate, because that's the only way that the body really gets aroused. Is, from my perspective, is that your body has to think that it's going to generate a brand new human being, and that's the only way it's interested in taking the act into consideration. At least, maybe not, but that's how I kind of break it down. And it's really weird. It is so fucking weird that nobody is going to be able to identify with this, right? And I see the smile on Doug's face. He's like, you are fucking crazy, bro.
I've got a few thoughts. So I'm waiting for your point to finish so I can.
How many thought levels is this, like, thought iterations is it gonna go through when you start talking before we hit butt stuff bedrock?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'll save you a mining operation right now.
We're just gonna blast to the bottom of this real quick.
Yeah,
No pun intended.
Yeah, and so like, porn doesn't really make sense to me because it's like, okay, I'm gonna watch and try to get my body excited because it's thinking about procreation, etc. And so I'm gonna watch somebody else.
That's a penis?
Honey, come take a look at this. Do you have one of those?
We've been doing it wrong the whole time.
But you know what I mean? I mean, it's I've got one of those weird, interesting perspectives on things now because my consciousness has changed. And the way I used to look at porn was, wow, this is arousing, this is really cool, and I can get off or whatever it is, or wow, I can be really excited for Whitney when she comes home or whatever it is. And now it's like, what is the fucking point?
Yeah.
Because we're not actually procreating. Because I saw that whole fucking process, like from a totally different, like where I got to go down and meet the cells and the consciousness of the body and witness the whole creation event. And it just totally changed my perspective on porn, on sex, on like a bunch of, like, I get why, masters of the past, like Jesus or whatever, or the ascetics are now devoid of sexual urges, which is how priests are supposed to be, right? It's like you're supposed to not have sexual urges, but they're forcing it the wrong way. It's like they're asking priests not to have sexual urges when the reality is,
all those hot kids are just like right there.
Right, exactly. All those young boys and their nice tight asses. But know what I'm saying? I mean, you're supposed to like enlightened people lose their sexual urges because it's connected with procreation, and if you're not doing something that's procreation, then you don't have an arousal. They're trying to force people into enlightenment by making them do the things that enlightened people find. And I get it now. I mean, I understand it because my sexual drive is totally different from what it was.
It's like teaching somebody how to mine for coal by throwing them in the bottom of a mine.
Right, and not teaching them anything.
Start hitting shit with a pickaxe.
Right.
And if you're still alive at the end, then we'll teach you the secret to coal mining, which is don't die.
Right, which is don't do all the shit you're going to do anyway.
By the way, don't ever have sex again. Trust me.
Right.
We'll explain it later.
Right.
And so I think we could go down the wormhole on this, but there's a couple of things no pun intended. There's a couple of things I think it's important to point out is one, I understand the concept that, enlightened, you kind of see it differently. At the same time, I think it's important to consider we're still human, even if it's an enlightened human, which means, once you kind of increase your consciousness, and I know you guys know this, it's not an end all be all. It's still a active working process.
Preach.
Yeah. It doesn't end. It's not like you reach it and you're like, cool, I'm not susceptible to all this bullshit ever again. It's like, no, you still are.
Right.
You still are. You always are.
Yeah.
The other thing too is I actually remember when I was in my early teens, my dad actually having a talk with me, and I grew up hunting and fishing. My dad would always often have talks with me during hunting or fishing, and I remember him telling me too, and this came up during the last time the porn topic came up with a couple other folks, and I remember my dad actually saying like, hey, you're gonna come across porn one way or another, and I remember him saying, probably paraphrasing here, but he said, he goes, it's fictitious. Do not think that it is real life for one moment. You need to explore in a healthy way with a partner, with trust, with love, your own sexuality. He goes, just do not ever extrapolate something you watch on TV, albeit porn or whatever, to think it's real life. And that's the way I've thought forever, and I never considered the fact that there's people that probably watch it and think that's how things are.
Right.
Like 2 years ago, I had that thought, and I was like, wait, people can think that's real? Just as a whole, broad stroke.
100%.
I never considered that. And
Right.
now that I consider that, I'm like, okay, well, is porn an issue, or are we not teaching people how to be human? And of course, the pillar I always stand on is we're not teaching people how to be human at a young age.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it can't, just like anything else, it's a matter of intent of use.
Right.
It can be healthy, it can not be healthy.
Now, when were you guys introduced to porn originally? Like, you grew up in an age where you've always had computers, right? Like, I grew up with no cell phones. I grew up with no computers, and definitely it was like middle school before we had real computers that were affordable, and then the internet wasn't until I was in college. and didn't have access to, porn or anything like that. Well, it was pretty quick after the internet.
Yeah.
Actually, we could start finding bulletin board systems and stuff like that. You could actually dial up on a modem and whatnot to get, topless photos of Marina Sirtis or whatever it was that people posted, and it took forever. It's like you get,
I actually know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's like, and it would load a little more in the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
You're looking at it with all your little friends, and then now as an adult, you realize that it's like super homoerotic. Like hanging out with your boys, waiting for that nipple to pop out. So you can It's like, you guys remember that time when we were like hovering in each other's fucking pockets, staring at internet tits?
Yeah, and before that, porn was finding, porn was finding nudie magazines on a dirty mattress out in the middle of the woods.
That was my first exposure. As I came across a fucking dirty magazine randomly. I was like, "What is this?"
I dug one up in the sand at the creek behind my house. It was called Nasty Photos, and it didn't disappoint. So I did what any respectable 7-year-old would do. I started ripping pages out
And stuff in your pockets.
Then I put the magazine back so as not to disturb the owner. And I took all the pictures back to my treehouse. And I put them under the rug up there. Because why would my parents go up there?
Right.
Oh man, the fact that that's so universal. That's like my experience is not far from that.
My dad told me about porn. He said, "Listen, son, if you keep staring at naked ladies all the time, you're gonna need to get glasses because this stuff will make you go blind." I was like, is that why you wear glasses? He's like, absolutely. I stopped when I started having bad vision.
Oh my god! See, but the porn is for my son is going to be a heck of a lot different. He's not going to find nudie magazines out in the middle of the park out there or whatever.
I don't even know if they make them anymore.
Right? Yeah, they don't even publish them at this point. Well, I mean they do, but I'm sure there's some fetish stuff that they ship to people's houses in a black bag or whatever. But I mean, his
crate.
His experience is going to be, finding it on the internet and then being, oh my God, didn't even believe that this stuff existed or didn't know this stuff existed. And then he's going to be talking to his friends about it and
good news is
trading best websites. And
now it's sexuality and all of that, the birds and the bees thing. He's just going to jump on the bandwagon with everything else that should be an interpersonal relationship knowledge passed down, like your drugs, romance.
I've already
all social aspects of life, any kind of learning in any capacity.
Yeah.
Well, just throw titties in there too, and we'll just call the internet dad.
Do they even have sex ed in school nowadays?
I think they probably do, but you want to know something scary?
Google.
My 3rd grade child has already gotten a discussion about it going with his friends who, like one of his friends is already being the class source of information.
There's always one.
Yeah. And so he's already...
We gotta make sure he's set up with a good street pharmacist so he doesn't hurt those kids.
Well, that's one of the things that I headed off to pass. I discussed with him the reality of drugs. And because it used to be like, we heard horror stories about, 6th graders are being offered drugs or middle schoolers are being offered drugs within their own community. And so I was like, well, he's in 3rd grade, maybe another decade later, it's now get down to 4th or 5th or 4th grade, whatever. So I headed that off. I was like, look, dude, if you ever want to know about drugs, you need to come ask me because I will give you the straight scoop. I will be honest. We won't just say drugs are bad, okay, and then walk away and say, because some drugs are good, some drugs are bad. But I said, here's the reality for you, is that your brain is still developing, and a lot of drugs are going to be horrible for your brain, and most of them, as a matter of fact. And so you need to understand what is a good chemical substance for your body and what is a bad chemical substance for your body, because some things in high doses will kill you. Yeah. And so, it was one of those things where
some things in low doses will kill you.
Yeah. And so, right, exactly. Fentanyl, and one of the things that you helped take off the street of Atlanta, right, is that, in low doses, that will knock you out, especially when your body's small.
Yeah, knock you out. It's like one of those permanent knockouts.
Yeah, right. Or your body just quits, right? Yeah. And so I told him straight up, I was like, look, I will know much more than any of your friends will about drugs. And I will give you the straight scoop. So if you want to know anything about drugs, you will come ask me. And he made that promise to me. And so I headed that one off.
That's the only way to do it. That's the right way to do it. Is to pretend to abstain from everything to the point where there's a void of knowledge, I think is just
Preposterous.
it's preposterous.
It's preposterous.
Yeah, because here's the thing. If you're the
It
type of
is.
parent who says drugs are bad and I'm not going to talk to you about drugs, or I'm just going to give you the standard Nancy Reagan say no, just say no,
Yeah.
right? Which is where I grew up.
Yep.
And it affected me greatly for a
Yeah.
long time with misinformation. Then the only information they're going to get is from their friends or from other people who have different
And
intentions.
kids are fucking stupid.
Kids are
And
way
the other
fucking
problem
stupid.
too, when you combine a lack of education, is, I grew up probably until like 4 or 5 years ago thinking every drug was evil,
Yes.
like including weed.
Inherently
Yeah, no,
not good.
I really did, because the people that I knew that did it,
Right.
in retrospect, I think they use it to escape. Vice use it to, self-explore, and that was a hard kind of breakthrough for myself to be like, wait, these can be a good thing.
Goes back to your law of intent, right? Where you've got, it depends on what your intent is going into it. You can certainly abuse them. You can certainly use them for the wrong reasons. You can certainly use them for escapism.
Most people do.
Even weed,
Yeah.
right? And I know a number of folks who use weed to escape their daily problems and abuse the drug, right, in a way that is unhealthy for them. But then there are a lot of other intents that are much more positive, especially in, cannabis and including psilocybin and
yeah.
some of the other serotonergic
DMT.
psychedelics, right? That
So-
we're wading our heels into, right?
People are getting real caught up with this difference between abuse and use, because all the people that use don't want to be called abusers because of the frequency or magnitude that they use it,
Right.
but nobody wants to do the research on what's abusive. So just to be clear, there's a plenty of opportunity to utilize effectively most of these chemicals.
Yeah.
Abuse is when it's destroying your personal life and you really can't understand why.
Yeah, because one of the things that I don't want to happen for Declan is, like, we went to the local police station and we had a little tour, and they had a little glass cabinet of all the things that they had seized, including drug paraphernalia and things like that. And one of the things that the officer said, and he's a good-hearted guy. I mean, I know this guy; he's a great dude. But one of the things that he said was, "You don't ever want to try LSD
What?
because." Right?
There's no right answer after that.
Well, because right,
There's
because
nothing you can say to redeem that.
and we're gonna try to have the MAPS folks on to do an interview and
Please, I would love that.
and to talk about the science and the positive science of, like, that they're helping veterans with their PTSD with LSD and things like that, and they're doing studies, and there've been nothing but positive results.
I was
from
going to
these.
say, finding positive science should be easy because it should be any of the science.
But this law enforcement officer, and he said this because he believed it, that LSD gives you flashbacks multiple years later because it's...
Did you ask for the data?
Dripping down your spinal cord or some fucking poppycock like that.
Because it is stored. It is stored in your spinal fluid and leaks
Tomfoolery at its
out.
finest.
And
Maybe skullduggery.
and it was fear based, and granted, it had the right effect on the kids to say, if you run into LSD, don't do, because at that age you cannot have kids experimenting with serotonergic psychedelics because the prefrontal cortices aren't fully formed, and so you don't want kids doing these things. But to give them that wrong information, at which later points they will find out that the right information, all of a sudden they won't trust anything you've ever said.
Yes. That dynamic you just described is a piece of me that will always be a piece of me.
Yeah,
Is
for sure.
Okay, if I haven't told this my whole life that this is evil and will kill me, and it turns out we're just discovering, or let's just say John Hopkins, for example, is recently doing a lot of studies on psilocybin, is saying, no, there's like a ton of uses for this. And then there's tribes in the Amazon, they're like, yeah, we've been doing this for 10,000 years, motherfuckers, because it fucking works as medicine.
This is news to you guys?
Yeah, so it's like you grow up hearing this stuff, and you're like, wait, why do we say that? But I'm going to go even like a higher view. We're still just human. People had good intent in putting out that information.
Yes.
But they shouldn't be burned at the stake for it. Man, the more people would realize that we are not as evolved as we think we are,
Oh man,
great things would happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we are so not as evolved as we think we
it's
are.
not an opinion. It's a statement of fact. There's nothing wrong with not being as evolved as we really want to think we are.
Right.
But guess what?
We're not.
We're pretty,
Well, that's the
pretty
difference.
fucking low on that totem pole, just in general.
That's the difference between imposter syndrome and Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right now, I think humans, our species as a whole, has a little bit of Dunning-Kruger effect, where we think we know everything.
Yes, a lot of it.
Yeah.
Of just
But I
over
mean-
in general, like we
Yes,
believe
yes.
as a species that the limit of what we know is the limit of what we can know.
Yeah.
Right.
The moment you realize there are things that exist that we do not have the capacity to actually understand, let alone articulate,
Yeah.
is a beautiful moment.
There's a Yiddish proverb that says, "To a worm in a
Be a
horse."
mensch.
No. It's to a worm in a horseradish. The whole world is a horseradish,
Yeah.
right? And that's basically just a good little metaphor to say, the Dunning-Kruger effect is in full effect for the people who believe that they know everything. That's everything that they understand is their entire universe.
Yeah.
and
so,
they can't expand that in
the
any way.
Dunning-Kruger effect, too, to articulate to anyone who doesn't know. So most people have heard of imposter syndrome, where you have the self-awareness, intellectual ability to reflect on yourself and say, am I good enough for this? Do I have the ability to do this job? Should I
Yeah.
be here?
Am I really qualified?
Yeah, you question it. The Dunning-Kruger effect is actually the antithesis of that, which is you lack the intellectual conscious capacity to be self-aware enough to say, do I have the ability to do this? So the Dunning-Kruger effect is, the atypical, overconfident, like kind of jock, like, no, I can do anything, bro. Like, no, I got this. And it's like, no, you're an idiot, man. Like, you physically can't do that.
Yeah.
No, I got this.
Yeah.
And they go marauding around as charlatans claiming to be experts.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
The death of experts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to get political, but there's somebody that I know that has that in government right now.
Man, I couldn't guess.
The Surgeon General?
I literally don't know. I couldn't guess.
The Surgeon General?
There's a whole slew of them actually that probably are in the
Whoever writes the legislature for Schedule 1 controlled substances?
Yes, that's one person I'd put on that list, certainly.
Man, we could go down that pipeline of the governmental use.
Yeah.
Because you know the governmental use of LSD, right?
There is none.
Well, back when they,
There
Yeah,
never
no, no,
was.
no.
yeah, the group of psychologists, psychiatrists, they're like, oh wait, we could help people with this in like
Okay,
the
Ultra?
50s, right?
Yes.
So
The precursor. to
yeah.
that.
And so the government was like, how can we weaponize this?
Yeah.
And so one of the things they did was they took people with alcoholism, and they're like, okay, what we'll do is we'll give them a bunch of LSD, so that way, like, they'll associate it with hitting rock bottom, so they'll be so afraid of it. And what happened was these people had these beautiful breakthroughs where they're like self-aware and like they felt this beauty and love that they hadn't, and they're like, wait, what am I doing? And it had this like, it worked. The end result was kind of the same, but in 180 different degree road.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can watch that stuff on YouTube,
Yeah.
right? Those unclassified films of LSD experience with the military
Yeah.
to where
The men at Stare Goats.
they dosed a bunch of guys in the military and then told them and sent them out to do an operation. And the guys put their munitions down, they put their weapons down, and they started climbing trees.
I totally get that.
Hey, you guys. Doug's a koala. They're like, are we supposed to be doing something here?
Do you know what? I'll get
No.
I'll get sentimental real quick. So there was something that kept me grounded in my last deployment, which was really arduous.
Gravity.
No, so I've always, and you guys know this about me too. Is like, I grew up pretty rural. Like, I've always loved nature. I always have gardens.
Yeah.
I love having vegetable gardens. Ben's laughing. I mean, I love it. I don't care. The process I'm just obsessed with, and it's amazing. But I've always appreciated nature, and there was I believe the plant was it an African violet? But anyways, I have a picture. We'll cut to it when I pull it up. But
Yeah.
there was a plant that anytime I went to our like forward office, my last deployment in Western Africa, I would always stop and I would squat and look over this plant because it was a beautiful plant, and two, it was so out of place. In a world of chaos where like, children are dying. Like, I kid you not, they were strapping 13-year-old girls with suicide vests with ceramic ball bearings, pushing them across the border,
Jesus.
detonating them at a market that I was at every other day. And I would stop and pause and look at this plant because it would just, for a reason, it kept me grounded. I appreciated it.
Yeah.
And it was just so, the contrast between this beautiful plant and being surrounded by a lot of death was just an interesting one.
Yeah.
And so, the proverbial stop to smell the flowers, I think, is a literal thing that needs to be done.
Yeah, it introduces a perceivable counterpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have the photo of this plant that I
Wow.
carry with me.
Well, I think that's awesome because, and it's fitting because you're in a chaotic situation and you're looking for the counterpoint. You're looking for the balance.
Yeah, it's a natural, apropos counterpoint. Just, hey, by the way, anybody that's still squatting and shitting on the side of the road, flower.
Yeah, right.
What's up?
Yeah.
Earth still loves you.
Yesterday there was a pile of poop here, and today there's a beautiful flower.
It's on my hard drive. I'll have to find it and we'll cut to it. But just really out of place.
That's
but the
awesome.
thing was,
Says the white guy in Africa.
No, that's the point I'm going to get at. Is I started to realize
Nice.
for like the first few months I looked at it, I thought the plant was so out of place, and then I realized that I was the one out of place,
You were the one.
and the violence was the one out of place.
Yes.
That plant had been there for however many thousand years.
Yeah. And it was beautiful and flowering and doing its plant thing and was supposed to be there because it found its way there naturally over however many centuries and was still there when you were there and will still be there probably today if somebody hasn't,
Picked it.
run a Humvee over
Picked it and dried it so that they can hang it upside down in a bushel in some hipster's foyer. I'm so fucking artsy. Oh,
Look at the life that I can kill to have such beauty around me.
worth it.
That's what I don't get about flowers as well. So I don't buy my wife flowers that are cut. Like if I get her something, it'll be a live plant because I don't want to kill the beautiful life to have a temporary beauty around the house for a couple 3 days, right? I would rather have the plant that she can put out in the garden somewhere or whatever that will continue to grow and thrive rather than, cut. I don't get the whole cut flower industry.
Yeah, every once in a while I'll buy cut flowers, but 9 times out of 10 I buy a plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of
here's a
nice
gift. Here's a
representative
gift.
of marriage. Buy a living plant or cut up some flowers and watch it die in front of you.
Yeah. Another thing that I don't get. Exactly.
You guys enjoying this scenery? Yeah. And it's gone.
Are you enjoying this slow death of this plant? Because
How do you like this puppy love romance? Oh,
Yeah.
you were hiding your crazy?
that I got as a symbol of love for you. Yeah. So, and the other thing that I don't get
Love weeds.
is I had this discussion yesterday with a buddy of mine who's in the diamond industry, and he goes,
Oh God.
so he brought up the question of, okay, so what do you think about millennials using these super inclusive, like super flawed diamonds because they're cheaper and, they can afford them and yada, yada, yada. And he was looking for, some kind of feedback within his crowd that said, oh, it's ridiculous or whatever, which is what he got a lot of comments on Facebook says, oh, that's ridiculous. And, color cut and clarity, yada, yada, yada. And I said, you're not going to like this. I think the whole diamond industry should go away because I think it's fucking ridiculous that you buy a shiny fucking rock and it improves the value of your existence because
you guys know
wearing
this
it.
stone isn't precious, right? That's a holiday thing.
Right, yeah, and that it's and completely made up bullshit, and that you're dumping money into an economy that requires kids to go risk their lives to get these shiny rocks out of the fucking ground. And why wouldn't you want to create use your money to put into an economy where you go have an experience and you can meet strangers on that experience that provide, a connectivity between individuals, and you're dumping your money into that type of an economy versus buying shiny rocks to put on your body, which, by the way, every fucking bride in America has a version of a shiny rock that they put on their fucking finger. So
Not mine.
how rare are these things? Right, when everybody has a bunch, it's bullshit.
Well, actually, that's something I was going to talk about too. Is for a while I didn't understand when people would describe gold, silver, platinum as rare elements.
Yeah,
But when I really,
Yeah, it's
I've always dove into theoretical physics. Literally since I was in high school, reading Brian Greene and Stephen Hawking's, the universe in a nutshell, and some other things. But once I started to understand that in a large enough star, when it collapses and dies, which it's like a couple second process.
yeah,
the last elements to form are gold, silver, platinum, the heavier elements.
Right.
They're literally rare in the universe, which I think is a beautiful concept. But we just need to be careful on the value we put on it.
But you can't make a fucking hammer out of gold. And if the fucking shit hits the fan...
I mean, you can if you're a dick. But
you know what I'm saying? Like, if the shit hits the fan and we have a socioeconomic collapse or a food chain logistics problem where people are not getting fed, I'm not going to be carrying around a bag full of fucking heavy metal to try to...
I am.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna take the Ron Swanson approach and have little caches of gold somewhere. Because anytime the economy crashes, gold goes up.
Yeah, but what is... Here's the thing. What is the value of gold? It's the value that people believe it's valuable.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. What utility does it have? It doesn't have any fucking utility for life saving besides, like, if people
Electronics?
abandon, well, electronics granted, but if people abandon the idea that gold has any utility at all, then it's going to be worthless. You're going to be stuck with a bunch of heavy metal, and frankly, I would rather be carrying around a bag full of Charmin. Because if you want to talk about being baller, talk about having a luxury item that you're going to wipe your fucking ass with, man, that's the fucking baller mentality.
There's a theory, I can't remember the name of it, that things like that, we can argue, like, scientifically that they are rare across the universe, which is cool. It's an interesting concept, and I think it's humbling if you look at it through the right lens. But, you know, if people don't have a value across the whole,
yeah,
it doesn't have value.
Right.
You know, we can look at technologies that were valued and then dropped.
Yeah.
And then once, as a whole, we didn't value it anymore. Like the pager, shit. We can talk about utility, blah, blah, blah.
8-track tapes.
I know. Yeah.
Blah punked radios.
What's that radio from MacGruber?
Blah punked.
No.
Slap bet.
No.
You owe me a blah punked.
But back to the diamonds, though. I was actually just researching this recently too, the industry of it, and the amount of control that the consumers don't have on it is disgusting.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
It's not really a capitalistic market.
No.
It's actually comical.
Yeah.
It is.
Like, De Beers basically created the whole thing,
Yep.
and they're holding back a ton, like a glut of supply to control the value of the market.
Mm-hmm.
And the diamonds are not rare at all, but they're just putting them in a warehouse somewhere to say, oh yeah, they are rare. They're really rare.
Yeah.
They're really special, and you need to spend 3 months worth of salary to buy a shiny rock to tell your wife or expected significant other that you love them, which is fucking bullshit in my eyes.
Unless you're the gorilla named Amy from the movie Congo looking for a diamond for a giant laser,
Right.
it doesn't have much value.
Yeah.
Amy, good gorilla. I hope someone gets that joke.
Thank you so much for saying it. I was
Amy,
trying
good gorilla.
I was trying to stop laughing so I could.
So Ben, what is your plan on your? Because you got engaged just recently at a Hawks game,
Yeah, this is fun. So
and it was publicized.
Man, I love football.
Guess who's not wearing a diamond ring right now? Because I'm not fucking retarded.
So what'd you get her then?
I'm not gonna spend any numerical value of anything,
Right.
regardless of how unimportant I find currency.
Yeah, because I put my money where my mouth is.
Right.
My wife does not have a diamond ring.
But is that what she likes or wants, though? Because I think that's an important asset.
Well, we had an agreement.
starts that way.
We both see it similarly that, you know, it's a whole bullshit gesture of, you know, meaningless shiny rock to try to adorn beauty to something that already has more beauty than the rock itself.
So I went existential and real cryptic like that to try and get her like mind turning in that direction.
Did it work?
Well, not initially, but that's to be expected with just about any novel concept to anybody if it's kind of abrasive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm like, hey, you're not getting a $20,000 diamond ring because I'm not gonna spend $20,000 on a fucking rock.
Right. That could be lost.
Or
stolen.
And
doesn't
then
have
anything,
the real worth.
anything after that works to justify that.
Right.
I'm not spending $20,000 on a rock the size of my pinky fingernail.
Right.
Do you think if people across the board cared less of what others thought of them, do you think the diamond industry would exist?
So this is where I went with it. I said, she was like, I really want to get, I want to find a nice like real engagement ring, and I was like, okay. Well, I understand that. So I'll just pick up a bunch of extra work and never be around so that you can get a $20,000 piece of rock and actually feel like this engagement is worth it.
Right.
I was like, oh, wait.
Right.
It's worth it without the ring? Okay, so we're not spending $20,000 on a fucking diamond then.
Right.
And
right.
if you don't understand why because of that,
Yeah.
I'll do you a solid. I'm going to go to the store and buy a really, really fancy $600 cubic zirconium and the shittiest diamond I could ever find. And I'm going to just... You tell me which one is the nicer one. VVS.
Yeah.
Motherfucker, what?
Right.
Have you ever seen a proposal, like a public proposal, or a not public, whatever, anything, any proposal in history
Right.
where the dude got down and did something real cheesy like I did, and then the chick pulls out like a monocle telescope and starts looking it over, and she's like, nope.
Why? That'd
There's
be
an
materialistic. Oh, wait.
There's an
Right.
abrasion on that face.
Yeah.
I don't accept this.
Yeah. It's like step one, they're very happy because they've crossed the hurdle of being asked for marriage, which is like a societal, marker of success.
I'm not discrediting the proposal. I'm saying as soon as you can tell me the difference between a nice cubic zirconium and a piece of shit from my
Right.
ass,
But here's the
then
thing.
I'll buy you a $20,000 diamond. But until you are a fucking jeweler and you really need a $20,000 diamond, it's asinine.
Yeah, but I've known women who have discussions about whether or not they should marry the guy because of the size of the ring.
Oh, I've got a real life example for this.
Knock it out.
I once
No way.
I once dated a girl, and she was sincerely a really good human being. No, I really have to caveat that because she was. But at one point she did tell me, I know. At one point she did tell me she wasn't going to get married until she could receive at least a $50,000 engagement ring. And I wrapped my head around that until the day we broke up. And then I was like, oh wait, never mind, I get it.
Just bending your fucking mentality over backwards trying to make sense of that.
Yeah, I really did. Yeah, until we broke up. Then I was like,
Exhausting.
oh wait, nah, I got that from the get-go.
Well, that's a whole problem with society in general, and especially in the West. It's like in the expectation of marriage, period. It's marriage equals and happiness equals house plus spouse plus 2.5 kids plus whatever, fill your
I
equation.
like your example in your first book about this, actually.
Okay, what did I say?
You talk about how you finally had the income you wanted, you had the house you wanted, you were sitting there on the porch. Man, that was so relatable.
Yeah.
And you realized you still didn't feel any different.
Yeah, I didn't. And I think that's what a lot of people's first marriages are all about, is that they race to
Man. A lot of
that.
second and third marriages are about that too. People are going to be chasing that fucking dragon until the day they die.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Sadly.
Yeah, because it's all about what they think is going to bring them happiness. And marriage is one of those things. Like in the West, we are taught you grow up, you go to high school, you graduate high school, maybe you go to college or you don't, but you get married and you start having kids.
But you should go to college because that's the only way you'll ever be happy and make money.
Right, exactly, which is a bunch
It's a
of
whole nother podcast.
All drugs are wrong. College is necessary, and marriage is a great idea. Sign up.
Yeah, I'm telling my kid, no marriage until you're 30 at least. Because
What do you know about yourself?
Yeah, you don't. You don't know yourself until you're 27-ish.
I would say 27, 28 is when I started to discover myself.
Yeah, when
Like,
you
truly.
Yeah, like you started to discover that you were different from what everybody told you were.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's what I told him. I was like, no marriage. And of course I know, because he's a good looking kid, because he's a talented athlete, because he's going to have his shit together, that there's going to be some girl who
He's
wants
good looking because genetics skip a generation with looks, right?
Right, exactly. he got my wife's looks. Thank God, because I wouldn't want him to be cursed with this childhood that I came up with.
With the walrus.
Right. Don't want him to look like a walrus. But here's the thing. There's going to be some girl who's disappointed and who's going to be offended if he comes and tells her no marriage until 30. Like, there's going to be somebody who has an expectation that she's going to want to have, her ducks in a row and, yada, yada, yada.
Man, I wonder what that's like.
Well, you know what's funny? Why the fuck was marriage always such a cool thing?
Right. Yeah.
What?
Well,
And
there was a lot more utility.
Yeah, of
try not
course,
to go
the
too deep in
history
the
of it,
weeds,
yeah.
but like the history of it, there was a ton of utility. There was more utility with marriage 50 years ago and past than there is 50 years ago current.
They're more like capitalist mergers, though.
Yeah, we're living in a different
really.
world even just now than we are 50 years ago and 100 years ago and 150 years ago. It
And
gets
I think it's
exponential
so
growth.
important to recognize that.
I keep trying to tell
Man.
Jessica, I'm like, listen,
Bingo.
the way you were raised is a perspective from like at least half a century ago.
Right.
That's what you're talking about. So when I look at you like you got a
Your
dick,
fiance?
yeah. When I look at you like you got a dick growing out of your face after you say something absurd, it's because you're talking as if you were raising a child as a World War II vet. Like
Right.
that, your perspective is insanity.
Right.
But what's important is you don't overlook the fundamental attribution error, which is you consider the whole of the person. You consider their environment, and you say, "Hey, this is your perspective."
Right. That's why I'm marrying her.
I know, but that's but how many
I
people would
considered
how many people would just stop short at you're an idiot for thinking that? No, you say, no. This is I get that that's your experience. Those are your environments. I just want to point out that there's different perspectives.
Yeah, I'll make jokes about if you think this or you think that or you do this or you do that, you're fucking retarded. I think the only idiot in any situation is the person that can't stop and try to take the other's perspective first.
Oh my God.
That's the only one that's dumb. If they're like, oh, you think that, you're an idiot? Like, nah, you definitely are the idiot for not understanding my point.
You know, one of the first rules of listening that I think is often overlooked.
Dude,
One of the first rules of listening that I think is often overlooked, thank you for taking the wind out of my point, is that you need to go into it assuming that your position may be flawed or may need some type of refinement, in that you're not really listening if you're just listening for your confirmation bias, basically, your ability to find the things, the nuggets within what the person is saying that will support what you already believe.
But
Right.
until someone has learned what confirmation bias is, how can they recognize it?
Yeah.
I mean, this goes back to the
And they
pillar
can't.
I always stand on.
Yeah.
If we teach people, you can recognize these things and it's cool. But
Yeah.
until you learn these concepts, how can you recognize confirmation bias or the fact that, man, I'm going to quote a made up study that I heard of. You know, the ability to change your mind quickly is a sign of higher intelligence.
Yeah.
And I can pull that study somewhere. I know it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But it is. And so I try to keep that in the back of my head, and I will catch myself sometimes realizing I'm wrong, and I'll feel the ego just being like, oh, just shit.
but just prove yourself right.
Yeah, and I'll literally be like, I can think of my times with my girlfriend, I can think of times at work where I'm like, oh shit, you're right, you're totally right. But I'll feel so elated after, as soon as I'm like, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, for me, it's like liberating to feel that experience of, wow, I can release something that I had been holding on to previously that maybe wasn't accurate.
Yeah. There's
And-
nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely
Actually, there's
not.
everything right with it. I won't even be that blanket. There's
Right.
everything right with that ability.
And it comes from meta awareness, right? It comes from that ability to take your mind, turn it back in on itself, to look at what the mind is doing, and then decide that what the mind is doing is maybe not as good as what it could be doing, right? And I think that's such a fundamental trait that everyone should be taught, which is why I talked about it in the books. But when you see the opportunity for your mind to do things, like your point was a moment ago, where you can understand confirmation bias, you can understand Dunning-Kruger effect, you can understand how your emotions work, and understand, you know, what has come to be to create your emotional strife, and then you can take it apart and change the components that have created your bullshit. Then that's a whole different world. Then you're talking about the ability to take control of your mind, take control of your life.
There's one, I want to point this out too, because I think it's a practical approach. There's one mental gymnastic that I do that really helps enable my ability to shift perspective, let go of what I thought was right. And I've always kind of been aware of this, but it wasn't until the last 5 years that I've really, really embraced this. I've told myself, if I don't have the ability to admit fault when I think there is fault on my half, or admit a wrong perspective, then I am limiting my ability of self-improvement, therefore my ability to do good around me. And so that's me personally, that's my mental gymnastic that I do. And anytime I kind of stutter with admitting fault, or whether with my family, be like, hey, listen, I was an asshole. Anytime I hesitate in acknowledging that truth, again, acknowledging that truth,
Right.
I tell myself I'm hindering my ability to increase happiness. I'm hindering my ability for self-improvement. I'm hindering my ability to help those around me. And that mental gymnastic is what I think of it as.
Yeah.
Allows me to just be okay with being wrong.
Yeah.
Ben,
as someone who's perfect, how do you handle the possibility that your mind could be flawed?
Wrong. Next question.
With my left hand. Just because it's my offhand.
No, but I mean, does that apply to you as well in your daily existence?
Shit.
Shit.
Shit. I'm just saying. It's funny because I'm sitting here with you guys, and you guys know me.
Yeah.
So it's a way different thing trying to explain something over a medium, but
yeah, it is, because there's a lot of things that like I've noticed about you that you haven't verbalized that you've admitted that we've talked about, like when we did our ayahuasca trip to the Amazon,
right?
And it changed my perspective on things. So we know I had a shift, and I know you've had a shift on your alcohol consumption, for instance, like where you used to drink a lot more than you do now. And we're kind of drinking today, and we all we drink in the studio.
It's like a ceremonious thing.
Yeah, it is a ceremonial thing that we drink in the studio together. But I don't drink alcohol at all except with you guys, basically.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that was an ayahuasca thing, but I think the reality is I'm just too old for that shit.
Yeah, you're too old to dump the poison in your body.
Maybe it was that experience that made you realize that.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe it illuminated it.
Tomato potato.
It's not about the dumping of the poison or whatever. It's just like at a certain point, it's stale.
Yeah.
It's trite from overuse.
Yeah.
So,
because you guys used to drink a lot.
Holy shit.
Well, but the thing is it's funny, because we were all alcoholics, and there's everything's funny about that. But the reality is that even in the military, it from an outside perspective, it would definitely seem like self-destructive. From a physiological standpoint, there's pretty much zero existing evidence saying that it's not self-destructive.
Right.
But for us, it was like, I could look at Doug and be like, yeah, Doug's definitely does not have an alcohol problem. And I think he could probably say the same about me. And I don't think we even really reflected on it that much until like just now when he said something.
So someone asked me a question about, what's it like transitioning? And I remember what I told him too. Because he's an old school Green Beret, and he was kind of asking me about, like, is it hard not being away from the boys? Is it hard working with people that were never in the military? And I told him one of the most interesting things I realized was, on active duty, especially in the SEAL community, is, you're running 1,000 miles an hour next to guys who are running 1,000 miles an hour. And it's not until you step away that you realize you were running 1,000 miles an hour next to guys running 1,000 miles an hour.
Right. Everybody wants to.
You don't realize it.
Everybody wants to take this run easy, except for the one guy going a little bit faster, and then you finish the run sprinting, no matter how much.
It's not until you create distance that you can see things clearly, metaphorically and literally.
Yeah.
So when you look at our alcohol habits, like from what you've seen me, I have a reasonable tolerance for alcohol, and when I drink, I definitely drink to feel the effect.
Right.
This stuff does not taste good. So
I like that you use that line of like questionnaire for alcoholism. That is like straight up a questionnaire.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
So
I drink for the effect.
I drink specifically.
No one else says that who has ever not read the fucking questionnaire.
I don't drink socially. I drink to get drunk because I like the way being drunk is. It's fucking awesome.
At least you're aware of it.
But anyway, I think Doug can agree with this, and just about everybody will. When you look at it from outside, it looks like we're all alcoholics, or we all got some kind of a pathology that requires substance. Honestly, it's every bit as ceremonious as the way we drink now, whereas just when we hang out here in this room. Yeah. But the difference in the ceremony was like an elevated level of tempo, passion, recurrence. It was something you share. It was a part of life that wasn't work related. You share with people that you have very intimate relationships with. Yeah. So people see the alcoholic, counterproductive, self-destructive behavior. Yeah. All we're looking at is developing bonds that do require a life sacrifice at some point or another from someone. So how do you discredit any opportunity to develop and nurture a relationship like that?
Yeah.
I mean, there are healthier ways, but I will say one of the aspects
Yeah, we
about
could have all done yoga together, but
Yeah,
nobody
that-
gets
that
fucking
would've-
laid.
that would have taken a lot of like sincere self-reflection.
Yeah, fuck that. Like, we want to get drunk,
But I remember
slap some
after-
sticks around.
But I remember after the hardest weeks, or like maybe the most intense weeks, or like maybe you had a couple close calls, but yeah, you and the boys are all safe. You're like, let's go fucking get lit.
Yeah, let's go get so
It's just like,
drunk
yeah,
that I don't know which
I mean,
way's up.
There are healthier ways. I have to caveat, but that's
Yeah, there's also healthier things to do in every aspect of life, including really heavy radiology cancer research or whatever,
Right.
that are safer than going to buds. So who are we fucking kidding?
Right. Yeah, because I mean, even going to your training that you guys had is a life risking.
It's already absurd enough.
yeah. Sadly, there's been quite a few trainees that have died in the last like 4 years, either from the training or from suicide after, which is an uncomfortable aspect. I don't know anyone we can jump into this too. I don't know, or at least I haven't talked to anyone that's made it through the pipeline that doesn't know someone that hasn't killed themselves because they didn't make it,
Wow.
which like breaks my fucking heart,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I know there's been a push for taking care of those guys that don't make it through more so after, but that's also the same reason why I get so fucking worked up when people on like social media are like, quit or die, or like whatever. No, motherfucker. If you're 10% of the fucking population that makes it through, you're not the normal population. Don't shit on the 90% that don't make it through. They had the fucking balls to step up and try.
Right.
How many thousands of people, Sean, you stepped up and tried.
Yeah.
Like, good for, like, that, you deserve so much fucking credit for that, and you can tell I'm really passionate about this. But like, you shouldn't shit on people that don't make it through. If 90% of
No.
the people don't make it through, they're no longer the normal part of the population.
Yeah.
Like, don't fucking shit on them.
Yeah.
Like, salute them for fucking stepping up and trying.
Yeah. Because there are certain people who have the mindset to be an exceptional operator, and they'll never know whether they're going to make it or not unless they actually step up and try. And then there's somebody who saves lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there are some people who do have the capability and the mindset and all that stuff and never step up because they don't have the confidence level, and then they don't wind up saving lives even though they could, and even though they had the mindset to be able to do so.
Yeah,
And that's a tragedy.
there was a guy in my my buds class. He was in my boot camp. I won't say his name, but he was a younger guy, and man, that's the sweetest fucking guy ever. And I remember at one point, like either after Hell Week or something, it becomes a haze.
Yeah.
You know, you go from, I think we started with like 295 people and finished with like 38 or 42. But anyways, it becomes a haze, and then, you know, days or a couple weeks after, you start kind of asking around like, hey, where'd so-and-so go? And you realize, you know, they didn't make it. And, you know, there was a guy that was in my boot camp, real younger guy. I think he was 19 or 20. Didn't make it through, went back, you know, they assigned him to some other training, and he hung himself in his closet. You know, It's like, what support system are we lacking?
Right.
You know, lessons, especially in the SEAL community, we always say, you know, these tactical training points are always, we learn these in blood.
Written in blood.
They are written in blood. They really are. And the thing is, there's a lot of other aspects that are written in blood that maybe we don't like to acknowledge. That other aspect of the training, not to go into the weeds with this, but, you know, I know there is a shift to increase support in that capacity, and I hope it keeps going that way, because we shouldn't know a single person that tried the hardest thing in the world, didn't make it, and killed themselves. I think that's fucked up. You tried the hardest, you know, my air quoting here, you tried the hardest thing in the world and tried, like, you should be commended for that.
Yeah.
You know? Not like shoved away in a corner and shamed. Like, fuck that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my soapbox on that.
That's all right. So we can wrap this up. But you know, I think that the core lane of this episode that we've kind of stuck to is that it's important to be able to look from the outside into yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think even with the guys who, you know, struggled with not becoming who and what they thought they wanted to be, there was a problem with their sense of self at that point, and they didn't have the wherewithal to look from outside to within to analyze what that was. And at any point that you have the ability to look from the outside into yourself, you can judge what things you're attached to that are correct and what things that you're attached to that may need a second look. And that's how you can improve. And that's where you can find your weak spots and your blind spots. And
it's okay that you have weak spots and blind spots. 'Cause guess what?
Everybody does.
Every fucking person does.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
There are two types of people, as Doug Moulton would say.
Those who have weak spots and blind spots and fucking liars.
All right, Ben, closing words? Not a closing word, but a closing gesture.
I would say people that are uncomfortable giving their kids the birds and bees talk, get ready to start giving them the drugs talk too, because that's about to be as
Oh, God, yeah.
as relevant. You know, that thing's going to be all in the same category.
Yeah, that was a good topic that we covered. I'm glad we covered that.
Yeah, I was just reflecting on what we actually talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're uncomfortable with your kid learning shit online,
Yeah.
guess what?
Yeah, certainly accelerate.
They just decriminalized psilocybin in Denver, and 3/4 of the country has a Schedule 1 substance, like totally legal.
Yeah.
So get ready to pull your head out of your ass and not just say, "Oh, it's terrible because somebody said so 60 years ago."
Yeah.
It's gonna be a real talk you need to have.
And Doug's going to skip his closing word because he's going to go pee.
Here, let me wipe-
Because he's been texting
let me,
us the
let me
entire
wipe
show.
the seat for you, Doug.
He's been texting us the entire show. Pee? Can I pee?
Hey, did you get the dick pics?
All right, thanks for joining us today. We're going to have a couple of guests in the next few episodes, including our dog, Reagan, who just entered the studio. Say hi, Reagan. Talk to you guys soon. Listen, you guys need to subscribe to this and share this with your friends, because we're not going to get any love from suggested videos from YouTube. So you got to send this to the folks who you think will be interested in it. Go to twosealsandawalrus.com, get on our list, because we're going to take snapshots of the list and send out free stuff. The sooner you get on the list, the more free stuff you're going to get. And check out all of our social media accounts, Two Seals and a Walrus. Talk to you soon. Peace. Share this shit.